Right, okay, guys. So we are going to be covering episode 5 of Discovery, which is called Die Trying. I'll be honest with you, I have made some notes on this. I normally do these on the fly after I've watched it, but I'll be honest with you, there's a lot packed into this, a lot, to a point where it's really busy. And in fact, I even had to rewind it several times while watching it because there's so much happening and it moves so fast that you miss things. And it almost seems like it's running at 100 mile an hour. And some of the interactions when they're talking even seems rushed. So I had to keep rewinding it to catch what they were saying. So apologies if I miss anything because I noted down what I thought was important in the episode, but there's a possibility I might have missed the slight thing because, like I say, this episode moves so fast. I'm not quite sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing because when you're reviewing it, you want to get the whole every little nuance that's in there, and it's hard to because like I say, this episode just moves so fast. So, like I say, I made notes. The other thing I'm going to say before I go any further, there would have been a warning at the beginning of the episode, but I'm going to say it again anyway. There will be spoilers, and they will be straight away. So, right, let's unpack this. There's a lot to unpack. Before I start, I might point out as well, this was a longer episode as well. So the fact that it's a longer episode, but also it seems rushed, just points out how much is actually in this. So, right, let's do our best to get through this. Right, so we're going to go through the rough outline and then I'm going to go through the bits I pointed out. So, right, so in a nutshell, the episode starts where they are going to where the Federation are, because as we know in the last episode we found out when Adira got her memories that she knew where the Federation was. So this is where they're going to, and basically the start of the episode they find where they are and there's like some sort of disturbance, and basically it looks like it's like some sort of camouflaged energy barrier, and they go through it and of course there's the Federation. And we have a moment where all the crew are all sort of geeking out over the ships because obviously, we're now in the 30th century. Someone actually does say that in the episode. And obviously ships are very different. There's some geeking out about the fact that the cells are not attached to some of the ships. Whereas their warp core. This ship's like a bio ship, things like that. So there's a lot of geeking out. And in this actual point, there's quite a prominent shot of the hull of a ship, and obviously its identification, and it's Voyager, but not the Voyager we know. And it's pointed out that it's, I think, the 11th generation of that ship. It's the Voyager J. So nice little Easter egg, I suppose, there. So anyway, they head on to basically where the core of the Federation is. I wouldn't really say it's a space station, but it's like a command centre, if you like. And they are transported over. And one of the things you notice straight away is the transporters are very different. So, and they run into a character called Admiral Vance. And right off the get-go, he's very hostile. Doesn't do anything like try and arrest them or anything like that, but he makes it quite clear he doesn't trust them. So, and obvious reasons for that, because he points out that there's no record of discovery, and obviously there wouldn't be because it was originally a black project, and then of course we know that they hid everything about it at the end of season 2. They even told Spock, for example, he wasn't to speak of it. So it was all sort of swept under the rug, top secret, classified. So obviously there wouldn't be a record. So, and he then goes on to say that he wants to split the crew up, reassign them to places where he thinks they're best suited. And of course Saru and Michael aren't too happy about that, but you know, we've seen this before in Star Trek anyway, so it's nothing unusual. And while this conversation is going on, there's like an AI hologram. You find out it's AI. And Vance mentions, because he's sort of staring in their faces and talking really weird, he mentions that the AI has come a long way since their time. I actually put down in my notes, he's annoying, and he is. So, the funny thing was, they say that he's more advanced, but it didn't feel like he was. It felt like he was just annoying, to be honest. I can't quite put my finger on it really, but when you compare him to the hologram, for example, the Doctor in Voyager, he behaves more like a human, whereas this one doesn't. It behaves like a computer program, and it's really irritating. So, anyway, we'll get past that. So, we find out in this conversation that the Federation have been at war with someone. And if I remember right, it's mentioned that it's something to do with some sort of temporal thing. But like I say, this episode moves 100 miles an hour, so I didn't quite catch it properly. But you find out that Discovery has committed a crime in that century because they've obviously jumped through time. So it's obviously something to do with time, and I'm sure he said some sort of temporal thing. So we also realise the Federation is very different, and they are very different. They're more sort of, I wouldn't say more professional, they're more stiff, if you like. There doesn't seem to be a lot of interaction between people you see moving about. Obviously, Vance is a bit sort of standoffish. It's definitely not like how it is on the Discovery, where they all sort of behave a bit erratic anyway, which anyone who's been watching Discovery till now has noticed. In fact, they're more erratic than the original series and all the series that came after. So it's very strange anyway. But you definitely notice in this one that they're miles apart, even from like Deep Space Nine and Next Generation. They're very stiff. So, and then we have like a weird part where Giorgio is sitting down, and there's clearly two AI holograms in front of her trying to analyse her. And there's a guy standing there with glasses on, an older gentleman. We don't find out his name, I don't think. And she's talking to him. She's basically trying to tie the AI up in knots, like playing games with him, like she does, like mind games. And she then starts doing this weird blinking thing, and it corrupts the AI, and they shut off. I didn't get it, and I don't imagine anybody watches this episode will really get it. I mean, it's explained, but number one, how did she know this? I mean, this is in the future. How did she know this would be the case? And also blinking. Like, what? Surely you could have come up with something better than that. So, and it just leaves her with this guy with the glasses, and yeah, there's a bit of a dialect throughout the episode, and you find out that there's been no crossing between this universe and the Terran universe in 500 years. So he makes that quite clear. And there's a lot of jargon talking between him and Giorgio throughout the rest of the episode. So we'll tie that little bit up here. It's easier. So basically, one thing she does ask him, and this was a bit I found a bit odd in the dialect. She says to him, "Why do you wear glasses?" Because obviously we even know in Discovery's time you didn't need glasses. So why is he wearing them? And he says it's because it makes him look smarter. You know, weird thing. Yeah, it's like they're trying to explain why he's wearing them. So they thought they put this odd bit of like, you know, script in there to explain it. You know, it wasn't needed, and it just seemed to. It took me out of the episode a little bit, because it was like, what was the point of that? Like, it's just a bit silly, you know. But then this is something Discovery seems to have a habit of doing, so you know, no surprise there. Right, and then there's a part I've wrote down here where it's Adira played some music, and we find out that basically the hologram family or hologram projection you see in the episode are playing it. So this part I'm on about here, let's just explain this. So we find out there's a race on the Federation command center, if you like, that are suffering with some sort of disease, and they can't figure out what it is. And they Discovery basically says, "How can we help?" And at first they're a bit sort of standoffish about it, and in the end it's okay. Then they have a look and they say, "Well, look, this planet was suffering in our time. Everything was mutated. Maybe it's caused by that, etc., etc." And anyway, long and short of it is they convince Admiral Vance to let them look for a seed ship, because they mentioned there was a seed ship in their time. Is there still one in this? And he says yes, it's called the Teakoff, and they go looking for it in a nutshell. And they're accompanied by I'm just trying to find her name, Lieutenant Willer. She's basically the right hand person to Admiral Vance. She goes with them, and it's because Vance still doesn't trust Discovery yet. So anyway, they get there and they find the ship. They have to tractor it out because it's in some sort of problem. It looks like it's in some sort of space disruption that's causing problems. They tractor it out and then they transport over. And basically the idea is that they get these seeds, which will then, like the seeds before they mutated, if you like, and then they'll be able to, if you like, create a cure or an antidote. That's the whole plan of this episode. And in a nutshell, when they get there, like I say, we've got Hugh and Nan with her. So this is good because we get Hugh in an episode again, and we actually see him doing, Doctor stuff, which is nice. And it reminds you a lot of the old Trek, where we had away missions and McCoy or in Deep Space Nine it'd be Bashir. They go along and it's one of them episodes where it goes around them a bit, where they're trying to find a cure or whatever. And this is the case. So we find very quickly that there's a hologram playing when they get there. And one thing I should add is that this is Nan's race of people. And she hasn't seen her race for a long time, before they even went into the future. And we find out in the future that they haven't had anything to do with the Federation outpost, if you like, for a long time because of the burn. So when she gets there, she's quite attached to what's going on. So basically there's a hologram playing and there's music playing. And Michael straight away says that's the music that Adira was playing. As we know in the last episode, Adira was playing a instrument and she's playing this music. And you then find out in that same episode that her partner was playing it before her, and obviously she's got them memories. So and that comes back into play later in the episode. And I then noted down Detmer has a weird spaced out moment again. Yes. Just before they go in to get the Teakoff, she has a bit of a moment where she spaces out. And she sort of like zones out, almost like PTSD, if you like. She's not really with it. I actually don't think it is PTSD. A lot of people do seem to think it is. But I actually think that this could turn out to be control in some sort of form. I've said this already in my videos because she's part cybernetic, so let's be honest. I mean, control probably could affect her. We know this because of what happened to that other character that died, and I forget her name, in season 2. So, and obviously she was like cyborg sort of thing. So, yeah, I'd say that it could be control, but other people think different. And then I've put here, good to see, another note, good to see Hugh on an away mission. And then I put something that Discovery's been lacking, which I think it has. We've seen this a lot in other Trek, but not in this really. So, yeah, like I say, again, it's nice to see Hugh or a Doctor character doing what Doctors do on an away mission, so it's good. yeah, and then like I put here, they then find a load of cryo tubes. Hugh almost immediately says they're dead because he scans them, etc. And we then realise that the dad from the hollow recordings, the dad is trying to, or was trying to cure them. Now, just before this, you do see like an energy moving through the ship. It's quite clear that it's an entity of some sort. Of course, you then find out that it's the dad and that somehow he's out of phase. And he's been trying to cure his family because he won't let go, if you like. And because he's out of phase, obviously he can't really do it. And they're dead. So, but he hasn't really quite accepted that. And he then goes on to try and attack Michael while she's trying to get the seeds. And she can't get the seeds out because it's voice activation and they need the dad to be able to activate that. It's all locked down. So, and he's attacking her because he's saying he needs the seeds to cure his family. So, it's quite clear what's going on here. Then I've put here, Lieutenant Wheeler points out that Stamets and Tilly are not very professional. Yeah. There's a part where Michael calls back to the ship and she says, the dad seemed like he was out of phase. Do you have any idea what might have caused this? And him and Tilly and the other engineer, the sarcastic woman, they start looking into it and they realise that it's CME. And at this point, Lieutenant Wheeler, who obviously is from this time, has a very confused look on her face. But because they're sort of bantering backwards and forwards, like Discovery does, she mentions that they're not very professional. And I'd agree, to be quite honest, because this is something that I've found throughout the series can be a little bit jarring. You know, it isn't professional really, is it? So, anyway, they start mentioning CME, which is basically, as they explain it, is some sort of radiation that affects transport, and he would have been transporting to get into the vault. When this happened, which just put him out of phase. So in a nutshell, they work out what it is very quickly. They reverse it by retransporting him back into phase. Like we've seen in lots of Trek before. You know, the plot device is always the transporter, isn't it, that fixes these things. So it's nothing unusual. Oh, and then there's a part where when she says they're professional, Stamets says, it's how we work. You know, which again is a bit cringy. But, you know. So then we go on to Nan, who decides, because they basically talk to the dad and they say to him, look, your family's dead. You know, as sad as it is, you need to accept it, etc. Only not quite as harsh as that. I'm just trying to rush through this a bit because, like I say, there's a lot in this. And Nan decides she wants to stay behind, probably because she misses her people. And we find out, that basically, or I found out, that her species are Barzan. I've got to be honest, I don't think that's been mentioned before. If it has, I've missed it. But yeah, they're Barzan. So she decides she wants to stay behind on the Teacoff. And there's a little bit of a discussion between her and Michael. You know, she points out that what Michael's doing is great and it's helped her, etc. And then there's a very, and I put here, cringy hug, which there is. It's like they've kind of tried to do it like a movie hug, you know, where you get the dramatic music and then the hug, and they sort of like proper grab each other. It's kind of like that, but it just seems a bit forced, you know. Yeah, it'd be cringy. But, you know, you get past it quite quickly because, like I say, this episode moves at 100 miles an hour, so nothing really sets him for very long in this episode. Yeah, they get back to the Federation, the outpost, whatever you want to call it. And Vance and Saru finally see eye to eye. There's a bit of a discussion, and he mentions about the Renaissance, and he explains his point. This is Saru. He explains his point, saying, you know, the Renaissance was what made people realise to sort of look up, you know, out of the dark times, etc. And he's trying to basically point out that that's what Discovery can do for them. Although it's old tech, they're from a long time ago, they can help. You know, there's a purpose for them. And at that point, Vance says, I'm not going to split your crew up because Willer's pointed out that you work quite well together. So at this point, he's decided he's going to keep them together, but he does make it quite clear, you go where I send you and you do what I tell you. So he's sort of laying down the law that he is the Admiral and he's fine to leave them together as long as they do as they're told, basically. So in this same conversation, he mentions that Detmer's baseline is erratic, which proves that something's going on with her. And then there's also discussion about the burn. He says he don't know what caused it. They have some theories, but nothing concrete. And obviously because of what's going on, they haven't really been able to look into it. The seeds basically help the race. You see Hugh injecting them, and they're all, you know, returning back to normal. So we know that worked. And then it goes back to Michael walking down the corridor on Discovery, and she runs into Giorgio. And Giorgio's basically just standing there, spaced out, while Michael's talking to her. And then she says to her, "Are you all right?" And she snaps out of it after about 30 seconds and says, "Oh, I'm always all right," sort of thing, and walks off with a concerned look on her face as she walks away from Michael. So we don't know what the guy in the glasses has said to her, but clearly he said something that's upset her. So, and then I put here, Michael finds it weird that everyone knows this music, the music I mentioned earlier, although Barzans have had no contact with the Federation for a very long time because of the burn. Yeah, she mentions it again. Isn't it weird that everybody knows this music, but none of them have had any contact with each other? So obviously this is going to be something that comes back in later on. So yeah, that's the basic outline. And I say basic, it's not basic, is it? It's quite mental. So it moves very quickly. So, right, now I'm just going to stop it here because it's getting very dark outside because it's looking like it's going to chuck it down with rain. So I'm going to flick a light on. I'll be back with you in a sec. Right, okay. Sorry about that, guys. Like I said, it's coming over quite dark outside because it looks like it's going to chuck it down with rain. So I had to just get some light in here because it was getting very dark. Right, so final thoughts. Okay, so like I say, sorry when I did the outline of the episode, it's a bit erratic. But then, like I said, this episode is. Like I said at the beginning, I had to actually run it back in places quite a few times because it's moving so fast that you can't actually keep up with it at times. And especially if you're making notes like I was, I had to keep running it back. I mean, at points you didn't even get the new characters' names, you know, because it's moving so fast. So, and some of the dialogue is so quick, you're missing bits, you know, so... And that is the problem with this episode. I did enjoy the episode, but I think it would have worked better if they had have put that story over 2 episodes, because you've got a lot of different threads going on in this. Basically you've got the thing going on with Giorgio. You've got the thing going on the seed ship, and then obviously you've got the fact that they've just met the Federation again, and this is all going on in one episode. It's a lot to take in, and it's jumping as well. When it, like with Giorgio, it jumps backwards and forwards, so it's kind of hard to keep up with it, and that is the problem with it's a problem with Discovery anyway, but it's a problem in Hollywood and TV at the moment anyway. I don't know what's going on at the moment, but they seem to keep trying to pack too much into movies and TV episodes, and to a point where I think it doesn't give the story long enough to breathe. So it's hard to keep up. You don't get a chance to think about things because it's moving too fast. I mean, a good example was, if I was to pick one, I would pick out the Star Wars movies, The Rise of Skywalker. I mean, that well, it is an episode, but that movie, I mean, it moved so fast that, you know, you watched it and at the end you're like, what happened? Like, you know, sort of thing. And this suffers from that too. I haven't really had a chance to sort of sit down and really think about what happened in that episode, although I'm kind of doing that as I'm doing this video, if that makes sense. It's very, very fast paced. Like I say, there could even be a couple of things that happened in it that I've actually missed because of how quick it moves. But yeah, not a bad episode, like I say. I think the next one would probably be a bit slower, give us a chance to actually figure out what's going on more. It's quite clear that the burn thing is going to be something that Michael intends to look into. And there's a bit even at the end of the episode where her and Saru are discussing, and he said, look, can you do me a favour? Try not to be so outspoken, you know, because you're going to cause problems in a nutshell. You know, you need to toe the line a bit more, because otherwise she's going to cause problems between Saru and Vance, and he doesn't want that. So, and that is something I think that's well pointed out in this episode, because she does sort of step out of line a couple of times. So that's kind of important going forwards. But yeah, it's clear that she's going to be looking into that. Now, I'd also say it's probably going to be clear that they're going to find a way of adapting the spore drive to the other ships, because obviously at this point the rest of Starfleet can't go anywhere, and that is a big point of this story, is that when they'll need the seeds and that, Michael does point out they're the only ship that can go there instantly and get it and come back, you know, because the other ships, although more advanced, can't go anywhere because they haven't got the dilithium. So and the fact that she points that out, is obvious at some point they're going to adapt the spore drive technology to the other ships. So I imagine we're going to see that later in the series. And obviously the other point of this episode was to point out, all right, we are from an older time than you, but we can still contribute. That's a heavy point of the storyline, I'd say, in this. And this is obviously what makes Vance realise that they need to stay together. So yeah, that's quite an important thread. But then we've also got the fact that Giorgio's acting weird, and it's quite clear that there's something going on there. He's told her something, we don't know what, but it's obvious it's going to come back in the series. My only concern after watching this episode is that there's going to be a lot of separate story threads going throughout this series. And I think, I'll be honest, I think they're trying to do too much, to a point where I think the rest of this series could well end up running really fast like this episode. And if that does happen, I think it'll be a detriment to it, because I'll be honest, if the rest of the series goes like this, it's going to give me an headache. And I imagine it will do a lot of other people. You know, you can't go on through a series with too many threads. It's going to get really confusing and messy. So it does leave me a little bit concerned, because, as you know, from me reviewing these, I've preferred this season so far. It's been much better. There's a lot of improvements, with the exception of the last episode. I wasn't too keen on that one. This one, not so keen as the first three. I'd say it was better than the last one, but my concerns are because it moved too fast. The pace was too fast. So I just hope they don't do it with the rest of the season, because I think it will end up ruining it. And I don't want them to do that. They're doing a good job. They've done a fairly good job up until this point. So they need to slow it down. It was nice to see the Federation. I mean, because although we have seen them in the previous seasons, and, you know, I suppose you've kind of seen them a little bit at the episode 1 of this season. Obviously, the Federation wasn't what we remember from the original series. And a lot of people had an issue with that, which is why this is good, because it's got into a different timeline, one that hasn't already been done. in previous Trek. So it was nice to see a different federation, that makes sense, if you know what I mean, because obviously being in a different timeline, the Federation are going to be very different. So you can accept that because it would be the case. We couldn't accept it in the previous seasons because it didn't make any sense. They were nothing like what they were like in Kirk's time. So, we know Discovery was before Kirk, but that's not really the point. They couldn't have changed that much. And that's the point that everyone had an issue with. So, yeah, I like that. And it was kind of good that, we're seeing a different side of the Federation and it actually to make sense. So, it will be interesting to see how they take it forwards in terms of the Federation because, like I say, they're very different now. Very stiff, they're not quite as jovial as the Discovery crew. There's no banter, nothing like that. So it'd be interesting to see how things go. And I mean, like I say, Vance, he's a very different admiral to what we've seen before. He's very stiff. He doesn't trust people. We're getting almost like a cynical type of Federation, which would make sense because, obviously we've had the burn. You find out they're at war with someone. So it's obvious that he would be like that. So it makes sense within the story. So yeah, it's going to be quite interesting to see how the Federation are moving forwards. So there is intrigue to watch the next episode, which is a good thing. Yeah, like I say, I just hope they slow it down. They just tried to cram too much, I think, into this one episode. Now the question is, did they do that for a reason? Because there's so much to fit in, or did they just do it because they could? So if they did it for a reason, then that's all right, that's fine. Obviously it makes sense within the season. But if they've just done it because they could, and that's how it's going to go moving forwards, then I'm going to get an headache watching this. So anyway, like I say, I don't want to put too much of a negative thing on this because, like I say, I do like what they're doing with it. It is going in a good direction. And something I also want to add here. Previous seasons, it's been around Michael Burnham a lot. Like she's the greatest hero in the galaxy ever, sort of thing. And it was nice to see that other people in this episode got a chance. So there was a bit more from other characters, which was nice. It's not all Burnham for a change. So that was appreciated as well. So yeah, I think that's everything really. Yeah, let's see what happens in the next episode. Like I say, sorry it was a bit erratic, this one, but if I'd like to think if you're watching this now, you've watched the episode, so you'll know where I'm coming from, that this is very fast paced, very erratic. So it kind of makes sense that my review would be as well. So, like I say, trying to write notes down but while watching it was absolutely impossible. It really was. I had to just keep rewinding it. So hence the reason why the review ended up being quite erratic as well. So anyway, if you have liked this episode, please like, share and subscribe. And hit that little notification bell. Can't stress enough how important that is because there's a lot of funny things going on with YouTube at the moment. Unsubscribing for no reason, and if you don't hit that bell, it won't tell you about the videos. So it's a good thing to do. And also check your subscribe still, because like I say, that is happening. And obviously you'll be made aware of our future videos and live streams when you hit that bell icon, so it's a good thing to do. And until next time, take care, stay safe. Nerdy Geezer out.